Welcome back to Steel City Sports. This has been a chaotic day for NFL-related news. I mean, insane. We've had so many different players change teams. Some of them I expected to happen. Some of them came out of nowhere. So I'm excited to talk about this. This has been one of the most chaotic free agency periods I've remembered in a long time because we've had good free agencies, but I feel like this one has been the most insane with just so many different players changing teams. We're talking about high-end players too today, and I was obviously sad when the NFL season ended, but this time of the year is just as fun, to see where everyone ends up going. So let's talk about some of these big moves. And I already did do a video about Russell Wilson signing with my Pittsburgh Steelers, so if you want to see my thoughts on that, there will be a link in the description to the Russell Wilson video. But let's get into some of these big signings. Let's just start things off with Saquon Barkley signing with the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I was very confident that Saquon Barkley was not going to be a New York Giant going forward. It just made sense for him to go. The team's kind of a mess. I wanted to see him in a winning culture, and they only had 1 year. Saquon was there for 6 seasons, and they only had 1 year where they made the playoffs with Saquon. So I think it was clearly just time. The team wasn't willing to commit long-term money to him, and I just wanted to see him in a new environment. And for him going to Philly, I didn't see that coming. I honestly thought he was going to end up being a Houston Texan. I saw a lot of reports linking him there. It made a lot of sense. They had the cap space. But to go to Philadelphia, I mean, if you're a New York Giants fan, this really has to be like a stab to the heart, because it's one thing to lose your best player, but to lose him to your in-division rival, and now you're going to have to see him 2 times a year in the Philadelphia Eagles colors, like that has to really, really suck. As for Saquon, I love the move. As for the Eagles, I love the move. Like, when you talk about value, I think this is a tremendous deal for the Philadelphia Eagles, because you look at the top paid running back in the NFL right now is Christian McCaffrey, making about $16 million a year. Saquon Barkley is going to be making around $12.6 million a year. So I think that is incredible value for what Saquon Barkley can bring to the table. He was the main reason why they made the playoffs back in 2022. Daniel Jones, you go look at his numbers when Saquon plays versus when he doesn't. And the Philadelphia Eagles, it looked like they were trending in the complete wrong direction. You had that massive blow up in the regular season. They obviously lost the playoff game to Tampa, and then they had some massive guys leave their team from from retirement, with Jason Kelce, basically the heart and soul of the team, retiring, and then Fletcher Cox, the heart and soul of the defense, retires. So to lose those 2 key guys on top of how weird last season ended, things just looked bad for the Eagles. It looked like they were trending in the wrong direction. They needed some good news, and they got it right here, getting Saquon Barkley, who I think is still easily a top 5 running back in the NFL. And it's just going to bring a complete new element to the Philadelphia Eagles, because, they really do prioritize that run game. But Saquon can also impact the passing game as well. So I think they're going to be one of the most fun teams to watch next year. If they get Jalen Hurts to return back to that level he was at the year they made the Super Bowl, they're going to be a super team. They're going to be a juggernaut. So I'm really excited to see this. I love this signing for both sides. Next up, we have Kirk Cousins signing with the Atlanta Falcons. And to me, this was the biggest surprise of free agency. Like, I knew there were reports and rumors he could maybe go to Atlanta. I just never saw him leaving Minnesota. I thought he was going to play out his career there. You look at how good he was this past year. Before he got injured, Kirk Cousins was an elite quarterback. He was easily a top 10 quarterback, was having the best season of his career, and then he tears his ACL. Again, it's another heartbreaking one for your team if you're Minnesota, because he was so good. You definitely, I think, would have made the playoffs this year if he not gotten injured. And now that he's gone, like, you're kind of stuck in purgatory. Like, you got great receiver pieces, obviously Justin Jefferson, who's arguably the best in the league, and you have Jordan Addison. But now who's throwing the ball to those guys? Like Josh Dobbs, you tried that experiment. That didn't work out. So now they're basically forced to go to the draft and draft one of these guys, whether it is J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr. So it definitely stings for Minnesota. As for Atlanta, I think it's a great signing for them. I mean, they have been in quarterback purgatory or quarterback hell ever since Matt Ryan went away. They tried Desmond Ridder the past year. That was a fledgling disaster. And now they get a stable guy. Even off an ACL injury, Kirk Cousins, I think, still has an argument to be the best quarterback in this division. It's between him and Baker, and if we're getting the version of Kirk before he got hurt, I think he's soundly the best quarterback in this division. And it's going to be exciting to finally see these weapons be able to play with a good quarterback. We're talking about Bijan. We're talking about Kyle Pitts. We're talking about Drake London. Like, these are all really high-end draft picks. They were all drafted in the top 10, so to see a distributor go there and Kirk Cousins, a guy who can actually get them the ball, they're going to be a really exciting team to watch, and they're probably going to put up a lot of points, And next up, we have Josh Jacobs signing with the Green Bay Packers, and this also came with the news that Aaron Jones is going to be released by the Packers, which actually kind of shocked me. I know he was inconsistent and dealt with injuries in the regular season, but just looking at that playoff game against Dallas, what did he have, like 3 or 4 touchdowns in that game? And he's been a big piece of the team. I was kind of surprised by that. But for Jacobs specifically, I'm glad he's getting out of Vegas because I think he is extremely talented, and has been really productive ever since he walked into the NFL. I'm pretty sure he won Offensive Rookie of the Year that year. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure he did. And then just 2 seasons ago was the leading rusher in the NFL. So to put him on a really well-run team, especially the offensive side of the ball with the emergence of Jordan Love, the coaching ability of Matt LaFleur, who I've said this before, but I'll keep saying it. Matt LaFleur is the most underrated coach in the NFL, in my opinion. Now you give him a new weapon here with Jacobs, who just provides that explosive run ability to go with Love's passing game. I think the Packers, they have one of the brightest futures going ahead. I mean, I think this is really going to be a dangerous team. Josh Jacobs just unlocks a whole new piece of this offense, and I'm really excited to see him in a winning environment. Next up, we have the first kind of head-scratcher for me, and that is Tony Pollard signing with the Tennessee Titans. Definitely disappointed this year for me. I've been a guy who's been saying for about 3 years now that Tony Pollard should have been the number 1 running back on Dallas, over Ezekiel Elliott. And this was the year they finally did it. They let Zeke go and gave Pollard the responsibility of being the number 1 back. And I'm not saying he was terrible or anything. I'm pretty sure he still cracked 1,000 yards, but it was just kind of disappointing. Not really what Dallas was looking for. Just wasn't as explosive and consistent as he was as the number 2 back behind Zeke. So this year, though, I'm really, really surprised by this for him to go. I don't know if it's like a case of Dallas just didn't want to give him money. I know they're going to be paying Dak here pretty soon. They're going to be paying some other guys, obviously CD and Micah. So it just depends on how this played out. But I'm surprised to see him go to Tennessee of all teams because, that's a team that is really entering a rebuild. I thought they were going to start embracing Tyjae Spears as their number 1 back. They were running Derrick Henry in a committee with Tyjae Spears, so I thought now that Henry's no longer going to be on the Titans, they would give Spears the mantle, but now they bring in Pollard, which I guess it's definitely an upgrade over Spears, but this one kind of feels like a random signing to me, and one of the more bizarre ones for Dallas to let him go, because now who's the running back on the Dallas Cowboys? Maybe this is a hint that they are going to be going after Derrick Henry. And, there are some other running back names out there. But for Dallas, I get it. He disappointed as a number 1, but he's still, a good running back. Who is the Cowboys running back now? Very weird one for me. And next up, we have DeAndre Swift going back to the NFC North, signing with the Chicago Bears. Obviously, Philly weren't going to bring him back if they're bringing in Saquon Barkley, so it makes sense for Philly to let him go. For the Bears side, I think this makes a lot of sense. You don't have that clear starting number 1 back on this team, so to go out there and get a vet who's proven, who's been really good, especially this past year with the Eagles, he looked really good. Didn't look it up, but if I had to guess, I would say he probably had the best year of his career this past year with the Eagles. So, all signs pointing to you bringing in Caleb Williams with the draft, giving him a security blanket here with a proven veteran running back who is more than capable, can be utilized in the passing game to go along with some of the other pieces they have there, like a DJ Moore, a Cole Kmet. And they're probably going to be adding another receiver, maybe a tight end in the draft. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad to see the Bears put some of their money on the offensive side of the ball because we know they like to spend their money on defense. They did it with Sweat. They did it with Jalen Johnson. So, whenever you're bringing in a young quarterback, it's important to bring in guys, like a security blanket here with Swift. So I like the move. Next up, we have Christian Wilkins signing with the Las Vegas Raiders. And if you're Miami, it definitely hurts to lose this guy, but you do at least have some depth on the defensive side of the ball. As for the Raiders, to me, they just feel like a directionless franchise, honestly, because they're bringing in a win now guy like Christian Wilkins to pair with some of their other great players. Obviously, Max Crosby, one of the best defensive players in the world, and Devontae Adams, of course, who's I still argue a top 5 receiver in the NFL. But like I said, they feel like a directionless team. Like Devontae Adams, it's awesome to have a receiver that good, but if you don't have someone to throw the ball to him, it doesn't really make sense to have him on the team, especially for the assets you gave up to bring him in. Just doesn't make any sense. Like, you're clearly not going to make the playoffs with this team. You need a quarterback. Even if you draft one, it's going to be one of the more uncertain ones. So for Wilkins, like, yeah, get your money. I get it. But in terms of, like, from a winning perspective, this move doesn't make much sense. I think you can make a strong argument that the Raiders are the worst team in this division, depending on what the Broncos do in free agency. At best, they're the third best team in this division. And I don't think anywhere near good enough to be a wild card team. So for me, like, I just don't see it with the Raiders. Like, they got some really, really nice players in Crosby, Adams, and now Wilkins, but they just lost Josh Jacobs. They don't have a starting level quarterback. Just feels like a team that is doomed to be stuck in purgatory for a long time. And the last move we'll talk about for today's video is Gabe Davis signing with the Jacksonville Jaguars. This seems to be becoming a trend with the Jaguars, as taking a flyer on, like, unproven receivers, because they did this with Christian Kirk, with Arizona. They gave him a lot of money, and I'd say it's actually paid off. Like, he's been really productive with Jacksonville. Bringing in Gabe Davis, who, has put up some numbers, has had some moments where he's looked really good, but I think overall is a very inconsistent player, especially with Buffalo, with kind of the turbulence they've had with Diggs running his mouth a lot. So I'm interested to see him now on a different team. He's still really young. He's only 24 years old, so definitely has a lot of room to grow in Jacksonville. It makes sense, but also, does this move tell me that they're moving off of Calvin Ridley? That's definitely one that I'm interested to see how this plays out, because if I'm Jacksonville, I know Calvin Ridley didn't have a monster season, but I'd definitely like to hold on to him. If you're replacing Calvin Ridley with Gabe Davis, that's definitely an L, because it's a downgrade. But, just it makes sense for their team to do this, because like I said, they did try this with Christian Kirk. So I don't think it's a bad move in the fact that he's still young, but I do worry a bit about his consistency. So interested to see him on a new team, but that's been kind of my take on these moves. I'm sure there's going to be some more moves later today and in the next couple of days. Obviously, we'll talk about them when they happen, but that's been it for today's video. If you made it this far, really appreciate it. Please go ahead and throw a comment down there. Let me know what you thought about some of these moves, and please subscribe. Thanks for listening.